spent in a miserable way.
U.S. News: intense competition for 2020 talent ramps up in South Carolina politics. The intense early competition among the campaigns is a product of the unusual breadth, depth and diversity of Democratic fields. In a presidential, if one candidate were to galvanize the black vote in South Carolina, the result could signal viability to voters and donors alike in many of the states in the Southeast that also fall early on the primary calendar.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.